Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to a special episode of The Tracy Show. Of course, I am your host, Tracy. I am joined by a returning guest, and I'll explain what I mean by, well, obviously, if he's returning, he's been here before, but I've explained why he is here for this particular episode. There are a couple of bills that I will be wanting to pay from the beginning. Hit that subscribe button. Hit it, smash it, obliterate it. The goal is still 1,000 subscribers for the year. We are at 386, so that means we have a long way to go. Subscribing is literally free of charge. So please show your support. You can support me on Patreon. For $2 a month, 50 cents a week, you can get several things. And just to let you know, there will be a Patreon exclusive show in February 2026 that you will not be able to get here. So if you want to see that show, High Heels and Blue Jeans, or Blue Jeans and High Heels, I always forget the title, but it will be Patreon exclusive. So you can get that show for just $2 per month. I'm going to hit this all throughout the podcast, so just get used to it. This channel, I've had a hard time financially supporting this channel. And so I started a GoFundMe campaign. There is the address right there. I'd appreciate any donation of any amount. There are several things that I need to happen to keep supporting this channel. I do not want to disappear. So if you are a fan of this channel, you're a fan of me, you're not a fan of me, I'd appreciate any level of support. And like I said, I'm going to be hitting this all throughout the show. So just get used to it. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for being here. I think, so to explain to the audience why Paul is back again, I had mentioned, I think universal basic income is a great idea. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense to me. And it's like, no, not really. So we're going to start off with what I understand about universal basic income and why you called it an interesting term, a Trojan horse. I thought that was a very interesting term. So what I understand universal basic income to be is the government gives people a certain amount of money each month. It's kind of similar to what happened with the stimulus, right? They just gave you X amount of money and you would spend it how you want. Universal basic income. I heard first from Andrew Yang. He was the first one that really talked about it. And the way he presented it, like I said, it made so much sense to me. People are having a hard time paying their bills, whether it's food, gas, utilities, rent, mortgage, student loans, whatever. It would make sense to give people, a little extra each month, and that would boost the economy. Because if you get people more money, they're not going to be smart and save it, unfortunately. They're going to go out and they're going to spend it, and it's going to make the economy grow. And you said, no, you were wrong. I was like, okay.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. As MMTers, what we advocate for is a federal job guarantee as opposed to a standalone universal basic income. And there are a lot of reasons why, and we'll get into them. That doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't have a UBI as a supplementary program combined with it. I think the Minsky Group, which is pretty famous for their MMT work. If for people who don't know, we're talking about modern monetary theory. They do advocate for both a federal job guarantee combined with a UBI. But what's important to know is the people who are really pushing UBI the strongest, I'd say, the Andrew Yang types, but also people like Elon Musk, people like Mark Zuckerberg, people like Sam Altman, OpenAI, Richard Branson, Jack Dorsey. These are all, really pretty disgusting billionaire types who are the strongest advocates for a UBI. And usually the way Andrew Yang didn't necessarily advocate it for it this way, but usually there's the people who are pushing for it strongest see the UBI as a replacement for the rest of our social safety net. So as a replacement for food programs, for welfare programs, for Social Security, even stuff like this. The idea is that it's more efficient, that it takes away the bureaucracy and this convoluted system that we have now. So the reason why we call that I would call it a Trojan horse is because the idea is, and a lot of people who do advocate for UBI, the argument is that we want to solve poverty, right? That we have things are unaffordable, and we have automation that's taking away jobs and all this kind of stuff. That this is just going to be the new normal, and that UBI offers some kind of respite for people who can't afford the basic necessities of life. And you're 100% right. I just want to just lay out here. I mean, these are kind of like stark reminders of how deep in the hole average Americans are. Just a few statistics. More than 8% of Americans are completely uninsured for healthcare. That's about 27 million people. 23%, or I think it's something like more like 75 million, are underinsured. So you know a lot about Medicare for all, obviously. So education, half of Americans have never attended college. We have like something like 800,000 Americans who are homeless right now, or close to it. They're in like with a 20, almost like I think an 18% increase in the last year or so. You have a lot of people spending upwards 30%, 50% of their income on housing, which is just crazy. All this stuff is unaffordable. We have 14 million children who are living in food insecure households. And as far as the employment level, we have like average of like 7 million on a per annum basis, per annual basis, about 7 million people out of work, which is about like 4.3% of the workforce. And it's even more when you consider under the real unemployment rate, people who have just kind of like given up looking for work, is something like 17 million people, which is crazy. We have this enormous number of people who are not employed. And our government kind of tells us that this is just the way that it is, that there's that there's nothing that they can do about it. And honestly, the origins of the UBI come in. Some come from like European philosophers who, like Thomas Paine and stuff like that, Thomas Spence as well. But in modern times, it comes from You might know this name, and people who were watching might know this name, but at modern times it comes from a guy named Milton Friedman, who's kind of neoclassical economist, who created a lot of the myths that are plaguing us about how our economy works and and what the government is capable of providing. So his argument for what he called it a negative income tax, which is basic. It wasn't for him. It wasn't unconditional. It wasn't universal. It was to provide a income floor so that people would have some level of subsistence. And his argument was that government couldn't solve unemployment, or that it wasn't the government's place to do so. And he had all these kind of like silly kind of libertarian individual liberty arguments about, oh, people would rather have their own money to spend in ways that they see fit and some stuff like that. But the reason why I'd say a Trojan horse is because it doesn't actually, UBI alone, a standalone UBI, doesn't actually solve poverty. So when you think about why people can't afford the basic necessities, it's not just the fact that they don't have, $1,000 in their bank account. I mean, it is true. The average American, and this was true before the pandemic, average American didn't have $500 in their bank account. They didn't have $500 in savings. But it's not just that. It's the fact that the basic necessities for life are unaffordable as it is, right? Housing is unaffordable. Healthcare is unaffordable. Childcare is unaffordable. And just handing people a sack of cash, $1,000 a month, one isn't actually going to cover those things. But also it ignores the real source of why these things are unaffordable, and that's really it's capitalism, right? Capitalists make these things unaffordable because their goal is not to provide the basic necessities of life to people. It's to make a profit. It's to maximize their returns. So just handing people, and it would be something, the cost of it, which isn't, the government could do it, as we talked about on the last program. The government could hand out $3-4 trillion to the American people every year, but one, it would signal, when you're thinking about the layers of inflation, where inflation comes from, and you saw this during the pandemic when the government handed out stimulus checks. It signals to big business that people have cash to spend. So we saw during the pandemic when those stimulus checks came out, and you heard this in like internal memos and internal corporate meetings, that they saw that money, those thousands and thousands of dollars, whether it's unemployment checks or stimulus checks, that people had to spend more money because they weren't spending on transportation, they weren't spending, going to work or whatever, they were staying at home, and they had more discretionary spending. So it signals to big business when you have checks like this that they can raise prices, and ultimately that's what happens. But it's not just that. It also, while you're handing out this cash to people, you're not increasing production. You're not increasing the productive capacity of our nation to make the things that people are going to buy. And I don't know if you remember, but when we were talking about inflation last episode, there are really two main sources of inflation. One is market abuse. So capitalists, monopolies and oligopolies don't exist to maximize distribution of goods and services to people. They exist to maximize their own profits. And the second is insufficient productive capacity. We don't have enough production in our economy, whether it's to make food or it's to provide healthcare to people. When we don't have the real resources so that people can go out and buy them, the price of those things goes up. So production, when you have a UBI, you're going to have more people. The inherent idea is that fewer people would be working. So production drops. Fewer people would be going to work producing the things that we need, but at the same time, people have that discretionary, have more money or equivalent amount of money to spend on the things that everyone else is going to be requesting. So it's inherently an inflationary, a standalone UBI is inherently an inflationary policy. Does that sort of make sense?
It's making sense a little bit, and here's where I caution.
Yeah.
I don't know what America, the country, is producing, right?
Yeah,
Most of the
sure.
things that we make, they're not made in America.
Yeah.
So this is why to me, I said, oh, well, it makes sense. People are struggling. You give them extra. And I know you're here to educate somebody that's pretty stubborn and out here, but it just, when you say that, I'm like, well, what do we produce? And I didn't think of healthcare. I didn't think of constructing or rehabbing old homes to make them livable. I didn't think of that. But I was thinking of things like lumber and automobiles and televisions. I don't know anything that I own in this country that's actually made in the United States.
It's all been outsourced, right?
Right. It's all been outsourced. So when you say producing, I'm like, well, what is it that we're producing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so that's true. I mean, but and that's where we get into kind of what kind of jobs we would be seeing under a different format, a different idea. But what's important to recognize is that it wouldn't, the UBI alone wouldn't solve its stated goal of providing security to people. And we already do have a basic income programs, right? You don't think about them as basic income, but that's what they are. Social Security is a basic income program. It's not universal because there are requirements, age requirements or work requirements, or stuff like that. Veterans benefits are another example of a basic income that's per month or whatever. Universal child allowance is another kind of basic income, and those things are a lot of MMT advocates. Pavlina Chernova wrote a wonderful book I recommend people check out. It's called the Case for a Federal Job Guarantee. She's all in favor of those. It's the fact that it's the universal basic income as a standalone project just doesn't fulfill its stated goal. It also doesn't. One thing I'll also say is it doesn't fluctuate with the business cycle, and that's something we'll compare to how a federal job guarantee that we advocate for really does function. That we'll get into it a little bit, but it's almost like if you had our economy doesn't provide the things that we need is what I'd say, and a singular check won't fix the lack of basic goods and services that we need, whether it's healthcare or housing or whatever else. It's like a school voucher in an impoverished area with bad schools. That's not going to, if you can't afford to get to the place with to spend your voucher on the good school, you're stuck in the bad schools. So the idea that we want to get across is you want to, if you don't have affordable healthcare, provide people healthcare. If you don't have affordable education or enough housing, provide people education and housing. If you don't have enough jobs for people, because the private market necessarily creates this artificial scarcity of employment, provide people jobs. There's a great, I hadn't heard about this before, but there's a great metaphor. And you're thinking about like the private labor market. It's almost like you're playing musical chairs. Everyone played musical chairs, and there are 10 chairs in a room, and there are 11 kids, right? Someone's going to be without a chair, and the solution should not just be to let that person be without a chair. We should provide people with that share, and that's what public policy is there to do, to fill in the gaps, to catch people who would other guys go destitute. So
Yeah.
I hope that's
It's starting to make more sense. I did not mean to interject. I'm sorry.
No. It's almost like think about this. I know you're so big on Medicare. It's almost like it's a public
Medicare
option.
For all, not Medicare.
Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Medicare for all. It's almost like a public alternative. What we call it is an employer of last resort. It doesn't eliminate Medicare for all. Doesn't entirely eliminate. If you want to go get private insurance because you want some fancy dancy, you could go get private insurance, right? But it would allow people who don't have it to not suffer, and that's the idea.
Yep. So we have several comments in the comment section, and keep those comments coming. Again, I told you all I was going to do this throughout the program. Be sure to contribute to my GoFundMe campaign. Again, Nelson is in the house. This is 3 days in a row I've seen Nelson. Nelson, welcome. Nelson says the reason why government needs to intervene in making jobs available to people is because of the failure of capitalism.
Yes.
Nelson also says we need to get away from the failures of capitalism and need to embrace the progressivism of socialized democracy. Then we can finally see more improvement in the American economy.
Yep.
Left, I know I'm going to get this wrong. Left Connect says hello.
Hey, Robbie.
Comrades, hello. Also states without any changes to our system, the basic income is just that much more money. The oligarchs vacuum up and people are no better off. Now that I did not think about. I didn't think about that because it's now like, oh, they have money. Look, they're getting $1,000 a month. Let me increase this flat screen TV from $2,000. No, let me increase this iPhone, which is already $1,500. Let's take it up to $2,500.
Exactly.
Sure, they'll get it. And now it's kind of starting to click. But what I want to shift to is now the federal jobs program, because this, I don't believe that I fully understand how it works, because I understand it working in terms of infrastructure, right? The roads are bad. Our transportation system is subpar. No, it's terrible. D
minus. Infrastructure is falling apart.
I would say F minus. We have our water cleaning system is terrible. 50% of pipes in the United States are corroded. So when I think of federal jobs, I'm thinking of filling those jobs.
Sure.
That's what I'm thinking of. But I think you're talking about something a little broader than what I'm talking about.
It is. Yeah, definitely broader. And so when you think about the federal job guarantee, there are a number of kind of like bullet points. So it's federally funded, and there are other names for it. It's employer of last resort. Bill Mitchell has called it a buffer stock employment model. There are a number of different names for it. But it's you can look back actually in history and think about the people who have advocated for basically what we're talking about, a federal job guarantee. And people might not think of it like this, but FDR's jobs programs that are part of the New Deal, which would go exactly to what you're talking in terms of infrastructure. He, created 13 million jobs alone with the WPA, rebuilding and building infrastructure that we still enjoy today, honestly, dams and bridges and old schools and all this other stuff. But also and I have a couple quotes. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to them, but in his For Freedom speech to that was his last State of the Union and his Economic Bill of Rights, but also MLK's March on Washington in 1963 was really the advertising point of it was jobs and freedom. And from 1963 to 1968 until his death, he was advocating very, very strongly for a federal job guarantee. And and I have quotes about that too. But so they were all very, very supportive of a federal job program. So it's federally funded. So when we think about as from an MMT perspective, again, federal government isn't financially restrained. It creates the money every time it spends. It creates money into existence, but it's locally administered. So you're thinking about the jobs programs for FDR were really federally administered. Okay, we need a bridge here. Okay, the federal government hires these people to do this kind of stuff. It would really be on a local basis. Okay, what does your local community need? Maybe your local community doesn't have your destitute school system and it needs to be upgraded. Okay, your roads are in bad shape, or healthcare. I mean, the human services angle for federal job guarantee is really paramount. So there are all these human services jobs, and this is something that MLK talked about a lot, that it would be an enormous boon to human services sector that's gone unfulfilled. And so you'd be looking in your local community for, okay, what does our local community need? Maybe we need this, maybe we need that, and it would be geared towards those communities on an individual basis. It would be universal, meaning that anyone who wants a job, whether you're unemployed or you're in a really, really bad job that has no, poor pay and terrible benefits or no benefits at all, it would be available to all. And it's permanent, but it's also voluntary. So it's people often think about like, oh, you're going to be a slave to the state or something like that. No, not at all. It would be entirely voluntary, but it would provide everyone who wants a job gainful and meaningful employment that actually adds value to their communities. It's not make work. It's not digging a ditch and filling a ditch, right? But even that alone, if you were paid, commensurate value, I mean, arguably it would be in some ways, better than not having anything at all. But it would be operating to fulfill people's needs, not for profit, because the federal government doesn't need the profit, right? This is not part of the private sector; it's part of the public sector, and so it wouldn't be operating for any kind of profit motive, if that makes sense.
That's where I want. We have some comments because more keep coming in, and thank you all for the comments. Keep them coming. Theus is in the house. Hello, Theus. The most successful economic systems are hybrids. Where is there a socialist economy that exists in a ethnically diverse population? I think that's a question because it's got a question mark on it. And then the next comment, and I'll let you answer these questions here in a bit, but because I have one now, also states the government should be the nation's loss leader by design. Education, healthcare, national and local defense, firefighting, etc. should never be profit-based. Left Connect says universal basic services with jobs guarantee solves a multitude of problems: income, healthcare, self-worth, child, elder care, infrastructure, maintenance, plus humanitarian and work disasters. Yep. And then Theus continues with his stating that would allow private industries to flourish with an effective regulation. And that's where my question comes in. Mm-hmm. So from what I understand, and yes, I'm calling this corporation out, and I may get dinged on YouTube again. Walmart gets tax credits to offer jobs to low-income people.
Yep.
Is that the type of model? This is a two-part question. Is that the type of model that you're talking about, rewarding private corporations like a Walmart, a Microsoft, or are you talking about something that I'm not understanding?
Yeah, so I mean, it's separate from the private sector, right? It's UBI actually subsidizes Walmarts and the big box stores and all those monopolies and oligopoly types. because they can suppress wages. If you have $1,000 coming in, the people the just like monopolies and oligopolies will raise prices because they see that you're having this influx of cash. There's they can actually suppress wages as well. There's no incentive for them to compete with any public sector. So what a federal job guarantee does is it competes. It sets a wage floor, competing with the private sector for those low that wage floor. Right now, I forget the federal minimum wage is $7.20. I forget what it is now.
$7.25.
25, is it? Okay. So the federal government could say, okay, we're setting the job guarantee wage at $15 plus benefits, and that would force the private sector to match that in some way. You would pressure the private sector to match those working standards.
Okay, so
and that could even mean like shortening work weeks or putting in place workplace democracy or something like that. If I have the opportunity to work at Walmart for $7.25, or I have the opportunity to go in my local community and help build a garden, or take care of do elder care, or it could be the range of jobs are so wide because there are so many things that our communities need, and they're so ill served by our existing economic system. So it could be a stay-at-home mom or dad, even. Like that has value to your community. A child without a single parent home, or who's left at home alone. I mean, those are negative, you could call them externalities or whatnot. Those are negative consequences for our communities that a federal job guarantee could fill in. And just as far as like the AI thing, I know this is important because a lot of people are fearful of AI.
Literally just got right to where I was going to get, because I'm like, well, if you have the federal jobs guarantee program and the federal government, because we have idiots in Congress, we do. They say this is just costing.
I'd say.
Yeah, right? This is just costing too much. AI is cheaper, and we're trying to save the taxpayers' dollars. We're trying to say, because the deficit or whatever, they'll use the deficit because they always use that as an excuse. Mm-hmm. How does companies, because you have Amazon making people literally build the robots that are going to replace them. Yep. You have car manufacturers now using robots largely to build cars. How does AI, how does the federal jobs guarantee work when AI is present? Second question, and I think you'll answer it first. When you get these federal jobs or guaranteed jobs, my question is, they should be, or my concern is, you haven't mentioned that they're including benefits. I didn't hear anything about healthcare. Most people go for retirement plans, dental, vision. I didn't hear any of those things. So I'm guessing that would the federal jobs program be minus that, or would it include?
No, definitely not. So okay, no, I'll answer the second question first. So we usually talk about a federal job guarantee in conjunction with what we call universal basic services, as opposed to a universal basic income. So universal basic services is healthcare, education, housing, food, childcare, transportation, provided at no cost, no cost at the point of service. So it's the equivalent of a universal healthcare plan, but for housing and for education, publicly provided, again, federally funded, locally administered. So it's definitely does not it's not minus those other programs. And all the federal job guarantee proposals that I've seen either include those as benefits, or the UBS program, the Universal Basic Services program, includes the federal job guarantee as a basic necessity. So definitely not separate in terms of you do one, not the other. And as far as AI, so what the federal job guarantee does by setting the wage floor is it empowers labor against the capital class that uses unemployment, the fear of unemployment, that, okay, I can replace you with a robot, therefore you're going to accept worse and worse wages or worse and worse benefits. Okay, well, too bad, Mr. Amazon. I have my local community willing to hire me for A, B, and C that pays better, where I might not have to work as in grueling circumstances, that offers me better benefits. And a lot of the jobs that federal job guarantee would be oriented around are not necessarily human services jobs, are not necessarily jobs that AI will be easy to replace. You think about like carrying elder care or something like that, or home care, or building infrastructure projects. I mean, some of that may be, but again, we could. All these are policy choices by our federal government, right? And how it wants to orientate these kind of policy programs. We could turn automation into productivity gains that could be used for a public good as opposed to a private extraction tool. It's the fact, it really is the fact that our federal government has been captured by the capitalist class that allows all of these exploitation methods and all these kind of it really uses the fear of unemployment as a weapon against labor, if that makes sense.
It's making sense, but here's a situation that I know is happening. It doesn't annoy me. It didn't annoy me at first, but now it's really starting to annoy me. So if you go to, because there's no community-based grocery stores in my area, I literally don't know any. So if I go to Kroger or Walmart or Meijer, they have the self-checkout lines.
Yeah.
And they'll have their clerk up there at the head of the line, to assist people. And then they will close down they'll have like other aisles where there will be a cash register and will be a person standing there like manually checking in the items. That person is gone. I've even seen in some cities where they're having you put your grocery in the cart and you just pay with your debit or credit card and you don't even have to worry. I think what's worrying me about the federal job guarantee program is what happens to our people in the service industry, such as retail, such as food service, such as janitorial services. If all of those people are eventually going to be out of a job, there's going to be, this federal job program is going to have to include millions and millions and millions of people.
Definitely. Certainly. I mean, we have, like I said, we have about 7 million people who were involuntarily unemployed, and something like 17 million people, or more likely 17 million people or something like that, 15, 17 million people, and more people who are underemployed, who want better work, or who can't afford, who aren't making a living wage. And so, you're correct about all of that. The idea is that we provide a backstop against the slide that's almost kind of inevitable from how capitalist exploitation works. That naturally outsources, that naturally goes to machinery and this kind of stuff and AI. So we provide a not just a backstop, but a force against those systems of exploitation. And I'll just say this: as far as like the idea is that we want to guarantee basic human rights, right? That was MLK's vision, that was FDR's vision, and Four Freedoms, and that there are certain things in our society that we shouldn't countenance. We shouldn't allow people to go hungry, right? We shouldn't allow people to go without healthcare, and we already have such a dearth of a lacking of these services that there would be jobs to fill in all these areas that are already going unfulfilled. It doesn't necessarily mean here, I'll say this too. Jason Hickel, I don't know if you know Jason Hickel, he has an excellent article called it's called Decommodifying, let's see, where is it? I had it up here. Universal public services, the power of decommodifying survival. The idea that we want to decommodify basic necessities, and that's the idea of universal basic services, that people shouldn't go without healthcare because our system necessitates private profiteering, and as well as when we're thinking about the ecological disasters that are facing us, there's this kind of like there's this assumed contradiction between what our society needs in terms of employment, and like if we're taking away jobs from socially destructive or ecologically destructive areas of the private market, like drilling, oil drilling and gas guzzling cars. The idea is that if these things are not necessarily designed around profit seeking, but rather around our human needs, but also the needs of our planet, then that offers a pathway where there isn't as much fear mongering about, oh, you're destroying the oil industry that people are dependent upon, right? People have been trained for these jobs, and if you take those jobs away, because we need to actually think about how to green the economy, well, those are jobs that would be like primary concerns for a federal job guarantee. How do we green our economy? Well, we don't necessarily do it by seeking a profit, right? There's a great Indian proverb. Often I'll lay this on people when we're talking about these kinds of things. There's I guess a Cree Indian proverb that's only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish has been caught will we realize that we cannot eat money. And that is what the UBI is offering. It's offering you money, but what you need is the goods and services. You need healthcare, you need housing, you need education. You don't need a stack of cash that will be devalued by the very universal implementation of it, but also by the capitalists who are whose whole purpose is not to provide things, but to maximize their money, their stocks and their returns. So yeah, the idea is that we want to serve people's material needs, not.
Yep. And we do have a whole lot of comments have came in. So we're going to just run through those very quickly. Left Connect says that Walmart and Amazon have more employees on federal assistance than any other corporations. There's noted that It isn't rewarding private companies, it is incentivizing. The problem is that the system is corrupt, so to support abuse as guaranteed income to the employer instead of to the employees. Another good option here. Good option. Walmart gets a tax credit equal up to the difference between $15 minimum wage, which I don't think is enough, up to the maximum of $5 an hour for each entry level employee. Also, he states that AI isn't the problem. Corporations and their pet politicians are exactly, because I would rather prefer myself to go through a cashier's line with an actual cashier.
Yep.
But what annoys me is that one person that wants to write a check like it's 1996. Why are you still writing a check? I just had to interject that in. Michael says, it is the federal government's job guarantee. Is the federal government jobs guarantee program going to include, and I already went over this, retail, fast food, etc., at $50 per hour? And then I'm going to jump down.
Probably not 50. I think it would be setting a living wage, which I think right now is something around like maybe $20 or $25 or something at the very most.
Right, but if you live in Hawaii, 33 is not enough. So wouldn't you have to adjust it by where the person lives in? Because it costs way more to live in California than Indiana.
Sure. No, that's true.
I would think that there would be adjustments that would need to be made. So Left Connect says you are not competing with every increasing technology and efficiency. Employers are forced to integrate and coordinate with workers, not replace them.
Right.
But they are actually replacing them. And final comment, society should be judged on how the least of us are treated. So here comes my next rounding the corner, because I think this is a really good discussion that I would love to continue in the future. What is the opposition to the federal jobs program? Because here, and this is what I'm asking. So you hear the Republican Party, and they are good at this, saying that they don't want to expand the social network of SNAP and TANF benefit because all people do is sit around and they just eat potato chips and they don't want to work. Well, why don't they then propose a federal jobs program that would virtually guarantee people a job, and then you wouldn't have that problem, right?
Agreed. And there's a strong argument. It's ironic because conservatives, I don't think would bite on it, because I don't think their arguments are made in good faith, right? I think it's their ideology that's driving their opposition, not so much. And I don't know how many conservatives have even heard of it. Heard of the arguments for a job guarantee, but that is a strong argument from conservatives. You would also be reducing those kinds of welfare programs, because people wouldn't be relying on welfare checks or a SNAP or something like that. If you can afford to, because you're making a living wage at your job, you won't need a quote handout, right? A handout check from the federal government. You would have enough to pay for, in addition to all the other assistance from decommodifying, those healthcare and housing, all that kind of stuff. You would be able to afford those kinds of things. I just want to make this so we didn't really get into it a whole lot, but right now our federal government uses unemployment as a buffer to regulate inflation and stabilize prices. It actively uses these 7 to 17 million people as their claim is to ensure that there is a buffer stock of unemployed people, so that wages are suppressed, and then corporations don't have to raise their prices on stuff. With the federal job guarantee, it's the exact opposite, right? It's what we call a counter-cyclical automatic stabilizer. So it contracts when you're in an economic boom. And it expands if you're in a recessionary period. It will expand. So if the private labor market isn't providing jobs for people, and you have increased unemployment. Well, then in this would happen. This would be self-regulating. You wouldn't have, like, right now we have our Federal Reserve raising interest rates and then lowering interest rates in order to, like, jigger employment rates and suppress wages and, stabilize prices, which actually does nothing. It doesn't actually act in the manner that they think that they claim it does. It's almost is the metaphor is kind of like a child in the back seat with a plastic steering wheel who thinks that he's driving a car. He's like, "Mom, look, I'm driving the car," and that's the one tool that our federal government uses to control inflation. But with a federal job guarantee, you have a buffer stock of employed people who are always capable of picking up the slack, increasing production, and it would stabilize demand. It would smooth out these kind of like boom and bust cycles. It would lower hiring and retraining costs. Even just if you think about, like, the cost of unemployment itself, we lose something like $2 to $3 billion a year with people who are out of work. We're just people who are a lack of economic output. So, in addition to all of the kind of like the social and personal economic costs and social costs of unemployment. You think about family breakdowns and mental health issues and lowered life expectancy and permanent loss of income and how families suffer and all this kind of stuff. But then you also think about, like, if you're just getting out of prison, or if you're in long-term unemployment, it leads to unemployability. It's hard for you to, even with work requirements, when you're coming out of prison, it's very difficult for people to find a job, because who's going to want to hire a convicted criminal? Well, those are perfect examples of people who could be picked up by our federal government and provided a gainful employment, actually contributing to their economy instead of just being redirected back into the prison system. So I hope that
it does, but you're missing the major point of that. The major point of that, because I'm going to move to something that I didn't think of, is that's what they want. It's designed that way. Prisons are operated by private industry, so they build prisons to put people in them, and whatever minor little non-violent charge they can put, that's what they're designed. They're doing what they're designed to do.
And honestly, and put them in kind of like slave-like conditions where they're paying them, pennies on the dollar for, my grandfather was actually a prison guard at a federal corrections facility, and he oversaw people of inmates who were making license plates in New Jersey. And they, paid them, I don't know what it was back then, but it's really grotesque. It's modernized slavery system that we live in.
13th, I believe that's the 13th Amendment.
Yeah, I think that was right. It's post Civil War. It was 13th, maybe 14th. I forget.
It's either the 13th or the 4th. It's one of those two. But I want to get to this comment, because this is the one that I have a question on, and then there's. No, you know what? I'm going to get to this one first. So it says, you can tell people that have never had to manage their payroll or navigate profit loss margin, LOL. And this is the point that I think he's trying to make, and things if I'm wrong. If I own a small business, my dream is to make TRACYMedia my sole source of income. Not going to happen with 386 subscribers, so hit that subscribe button. But that's what I want to do. I want to make it my sole source of income. If I'm hiring people under, let's just say my business qualifies for this, because I'm assuming there's some type of criteria, how does the small business that doesn't fit the niche of construction, Well, no, let me backtrack that. It doesn't fit the
Sure.
niche of construction or healthcare. It's its own category under social media / entertainment. How can I or anybody that wants to start a business that's non-conventional, how would they benefit from the federal jobs program? Would they receive some type of tax incentive or a credit, or what if they want to participate, but they just don't have the funds to offer someone what I would say is the living wage? I would say $50 an hour, because I feel like if you can't pay a living wage, what are you in business for? But again, that's just me. How does a federal jobs guarantee program work with the small business person that's already behind the eight ball because they don't have the money to go out and hire? They may have the desire, but they don't have the money to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought of that as far as, existing small businesses, and how you as a, I mean, it could be these are all like policy choices that would be determined by like your local community, I suppose. If you convince your local community that your activism, or I mean, the breadth of possibilities for how a federal job guarantee would be fulfilled in one community versus another are only limited by what your local community determines. And if they determine, this is valuable for our purposes, then I mean, it could be limitless. So really, the question is not necessarily like what the constraints are, but like how do those job opportunities contribute to our overall our communities? I guess that would be my response. I don't have a great answer for that specifically, though, as far as you as a small business, because when we think about it,
or any small
individual.
business.
No, I know. When we think about the federal job guarantee, we're thinking about it in terms of like individual employees working for their local communities, and community projects, or for your personal familial benefit or your neighbor's benefit. But I don't have like it hasn't come up in the literature or that I've read, but I know it must be there, and I apologize for not having a better answer for that.
Oh, that's okay, because I think Scott has something that I know you're not going to agree with. So Scott H, thank you for tuning in. He says the government is a welfare jobs program for the losers. Get real. Can I answer Scott first before? It amazes me that people think like that, because if we really want to see things change, people housed, people clothed, people get, and I don't know, Scott, if you want to see these things, people get health care, child care. We can't afford those things. So that's my answer. But Paul, you may go ahead and give the intelligent answer.
No. That's a fantastic answer. I mean, it is really, I think, a question of what kind of society you want to live in. Do we want to live in a society where people are destitute and homeless and starving and jobless? FDR, in the greatest depths of our depression, decided not to. Like he said, I'll give you quotes, and maybe he thinks that FDR is a loser. I'm not a big social democrat. I'm more of a revolutionary socialist and that kind of thing. But I mean, there were needs that the American people had that were served by the jobs programs that he put forward. He pulled millions of people out of poverty. For there is nothing mysterious about the foundations of a healthy and strong democracy, he said. The basic things expected by our people of their political and economic systems are simple. equality of opportunity for youth and for others, jobs for those who can work, securities for those who can need it. His four freedoms speech was, the freedom from wants. Economic understandings which will secure every nation to a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. So, I don't think I think it was Rodney who said we should judge our nation or society based on how we treat the least among us. And so to just say like a job program for losers, I mean, like, okay. I that's not the society. That's not the type of society that I want to live in. Maybe I'm more compassionate than others, but I think that's pretty, for lack of a better word, pretty grotesque, point of view, in my opinion. But it shows a lack of compassion for your fellow human being, and that's what we're talking about: basic human rights, fulfilling basic human needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing, which are, I think they're universal, but
So we have already been at this for an hour and I still have questions. Okay.
I still have stuff to say, but
I'm just kind of flowing through these comments. If he had lived long enough, we would have FDR's second Bill of Rights, and the conversation would be entirely different. Here comes this is my question. And how good are you on time? Because I got.
I'm here for as long as you want.
Okay.
I got nothing.
This is what I want to say about FDR. FDR is not one of my favorite presidents. Why? Yep. Because he was inherently racist.
Yep.
The things that he did against Black people. I don't care that he talk about what he did. Yes, he did. He did create jobs that got us out of the Depression, but it was for white people.
Yep.
It was for white people.
Yep.
But I believe, and Jesus is saying this here, careful polishing of FDR's legacy, his New Deal specifically cut out labor roles inhabited by Black people intentionally. Some edits over time made it better. And that's what I would like the federal jobs program, and maybe I need to read more, emphasize that more, and leave just leave FDR out of it. Because I'm like, dude, he did all this. Dude, he did all this stuff for white people. He was not thinking of Black people. It just wasn't happening. Yes, again, he got, he did rescue the nation from the Great Depression, got people working. But again, those were white people. And if Black people did have jobs, they were underpaid. They were nowhere paid near what their white counterparts were paid. You have women that were going into the military because of World War II. White women were treated way better than their Black counterparts of the WAC. Women's, I forget what the A and the C stand for. So that's my hesitation of leaning in on the FDR thing, because I'm like, every time I hear it, I'm just like, oh no, not FDR.
Totally,
come on,
totally fair. Totally fair, and you're completely right. And I have additional. I think that he saved capitalism from destroying itself at the same time. Like in addition to all of the exclusionary, racist, exclusionary policies with his jobs programs, the New Deal reforms really kind of, and they've been rolled back and rolled back and rolled back, but they saved capitalism from itself. Like, we had an opportunity to go in a more revolutionary direction that to challenge capitalism more directly, and he did it. So, but I'll say that again, MLK as well. From 1963 to 1968, he was really hammering a job guarantee. He also pushed, I will say this, he also did advocate for a universal basic income, but it was kind of like, in conjunction with a job guarantee. And there was a very interesting quote that he had. Let's see where we have it. This is from I don't know if this was from his March or one of his letters, but one of the things that MLK said is economic expansion alone cannot do the job of improving the employment situation of African Americans. It provides the base for improvement, but other things must be constructed upon it. The nation will also have to find an answer to full employment, including a more imaginative approach than has been conceived for neutralizing the perils of automation. I mean, he really did see. He was a visionary. That's kind of obvious, but today, as the skilled and semi-skilled African American attempts to mount the ladder of economic security, he finds himself in competition with a white working man at the very time when automation is scrapping 40,000 jobs a week. We need an economic bill of rights that would guarantee a job to all people who want to work and are able to work. It would mean creating certain public service jobs, a federal program of public works, retraining, and jobs for all, so that none, white or black, will have the cause to feel threatened. So he was really quite a visionary in this kind of space. Also in his, I don't know if his book, Where We Go From Here, he outlined it pretty, the case for a job guarantee pretty specifically. Where he was talking about the need to fill these, provide for communities who are being underserved, and how the myriad of benefits to individuals, families, communities, the nation as a whole. So I'll mention this one other thing as well, that because we don't think of, all this is kind of theoretical in the sense that we don't have a federal job guarantee. We don't see it in place in our country. We don't have even on the doorstep or in the horizon. But there are places where federal jobs programs have been created, and not just in the United States. India is one example, but in this is kind of comes present to mind was we're bailing out Argentina, but and some people may not know this, but there was Argentina had a federal job guarantee program in the economic collapse in 2001. They instituted something called the Plan Jefes y Jefes, and I'm going to butcher this, de Hogares Desocupados, which was a federal job guarantee that was limited to federally funded, locally administered. It was limited to unemployed heads of households, and it expanded much more rapidly than I think anyone expected. At its height, it was something like 13% of the total labor force in the first year, but it was extraordinarily successful. Particularly with female employment, there were, women were particularly underserved in terms of were particularly involuntarily employed more than anyone, and they improved local infrastructure and community service. They did sanitation and housing and roads and building schools, all this kind of stuff. And then gradually, as Argentina recovered from this economic crisis, it went away. And so that's why we advocate for making it's not a temporary program. It's temporary for the individual. As you find the job skills that you would need to, you can re-enter the private labor force. But it's a permanent program that ebbs and flows with the private market. If you're in a recessionary period, it expands. If you're in an economic boom, then it can contract and people go back into the private workforce.
Yep. Everybody, thank you for your comments. So Nelson states, Ronald Reagan started the whole trickle-down economics concept, and we're still waiting for it to happen, while more money keeps going up to the millionaires and corporate owners.
Yep.
This follows up with, and Trump is effectively the rebirth of FDR, just darker. He wants to help one segment of society expressly more than all others. This is where progressives lose people like me. He also says this one, and I'm going to let you answer this. Please do not invoke MLK to make a point. I get your respect for him, but it is irritating always to dig into the civil rights crate to make a point. Where are the white Latinos, etc. examples?
Well, I did just give an example in Argentina, and I'm wondering if he means in Latino examples in this country of people advocating for a federal job guarantee in this country, or not.
I don't know. But I think, and because I know he is, I'm pretty sure that's what he means. But of course, he's not here for me to ask him. But just putting up the point, thanking everybody for their comments. I do have one other concern, and this, I promise, will be my last question. One, well, this is a two-part question. Will you come back to talk about this?
Of course. I love talking to you. Of course.
And second, here's where my concern, and I'm all for people working. I'm all for it. I think we need to do something. But to me, we need to move away from capitalism. Capitalism, in my opinion, is just, I'm going to get mine. I don't care about you. As long as I'm fine. Oh, wait a minute. He answered. I'm saying that in America, there are so many people that should be considered, but we always hear MLK. Okay, so what about people like Malcolm X, Huey Newton? I'm just naming civil rights leaders that I can think of like off the top of my head.
Yep. I don't know their positions on this policy specifically. I mean, I think they were definitely more revolutionary. I mean, MLK was a revolutionary too, but I don't know about their positions on federal job guarantee. In some ways, is more of a social democratic reform, right? It doesn't. We're not abolishing capitalism with it, and I'm a socialist. I'm not a I'm closer to a communist. I'm leaning more and more closer to communist every day, in that sense that I don't believe that we can vote our way out of this, and I 100% with you on the abolishment of
it's so evil. It's like, wait a minute. It's so contradictory. I think I heard Ben Dixon say that capitalism and Christianity, they don't go together. They're like two opposite polar. I'm like, no. It's just like, okay, I'm going to get mine. I don't care. You can starve. You can be on the streets. Not me, oh well. Whereas I want to live in a society where I know people are taken care of.
Yeah,
we could eradicate all of these things, right? We could eradicate homelessness. We could eradicate the high unemployment. We could eradicate AI taking over people's jobs.
Or we could, again, I'm of the opinion that it's not necessarily AI specifically taking over their jobs.
It's not AI. It's the way they're using AI. Thank you for the correction.
No.
We have a Congress. Because you said you don't believe they'll come through the government, but I kind of take a to the left point of this. We would need the federal jobs program to pass Congress. We're just not gonna all of a sudden tomorrow be like, oh, okay, we're gonna. And I'm assuming you want this on the federal level, not just like California does it, and then maybe New York picks it up, and maybe this state. You want it federal.
State by state. No,
it's going to mean we're going to have to elect people that are for this. And the only two candidates that I know that are for it, neither of them got elected. That was Jill Stein and Dr. Cornell West. Those are the only two I've ever heard talk about a federal jobs guarantee program. So how can we, and of course I'm going off of you saying, well, it doesn't work through the election process. Well, you have to get people there to pass it, right? You can't just, to me, you can't just ignore the process of it, because that's what it's going to take to get Medicare for all, elimination of student loan debt, all the things we want to happen. You have to rely on the electoral process in a sense. Now, that's not the only tool you should be using. You should definitely be organizing at the local level, establishing food community banks, all of those things. I believe those. But to me, it just ignoring it. I'm like, well, you're not going to get what you want, because at some instance, some president is going to have to sign his or her signature to say this is law.
I think what's important to recognize is that I don't think that we don't have a democracy. And we talk about this on RP a lot, all the time, that we don't have a democracy. Arguably, it was never a democracy. It was, founded as a plutocracy. It was founded on genocide and slavery, and a plutocracy for white landowning men only. And so it's arguably it's never been. And I think I remember sharing with you the graph of the Princeton study on last episode, where kind of like the average American influence on our collective our decisions by our government is zero.
There's
zero, no effect on our policy whatsoever, as opposed to elites, where it's kind of like a 45 degree, or not a 45 degree angle, but a kind of a wavy that approximates, they clearly have a lot of influence. So I understand what you're saying, but I think we have to start having the realization that it doesn't matter how many, people who say that they're progressives, or even, bend their ear. I mean, AOC, used to be for this kind of thing. She did talk about a federal job guarantee. Bernie Sanders did talk about a job guarantee. It was kind of like, it was probably one of his more radical, kind of policy proposals. But once they get into power, it all goes away.
And see,
so I don't think that they.
Yeah, because I get what you're saying. We don't have a government. It seems like where we put in there, they don't listen. Here's what I would say: put somebody else in. I'm always going to say put somebody else in. And if that person doesn't work, put somebody else in. If that person doesn't work, put somebody else in. Because what I don't want people to do, and it irks my last nerves, you don't vote, even at the local level, and then you start complaining. Oh my goodness, that irks my nerves. This is, like I said, it's part of the toolbox. It's not the only thing in the toolbox. It's not the only thing in the toolbox. It's one of several things we can do. But it seems to me that just to say, well, it's not going to work, well, then my question would be, how does it become law? Somebody's going to have to pass it. It's going to have to go through some type of congressional hearing. And like I said, some president's going to have to be like, yes, well, I'm for this.
If we're talking about, if we're actually talking about abolishing capitalism and, moving beyond capitalism, moving towards a transitionary phase of socialism onto, a communism, a classless society, moneyless society, we don't get there with these levers of power. We don't get there through elections. I think it's really important that we have that. And I get it that, it's frustrating to recognize, and it's scary to recognize that we can't, that we don't have any agency. I mean, if you look at the genocide in Gaza, one of the most disgusting episodes in American history, my lifetime probably, where we're mass bombing tens of thousands of children, or facilitating it at the very least. And, you have millions or tens of thousands of people out in the streets. You have, under Biden, under Trump, right? Same thing. And under even something that grotesque, we witnessed how many years of it now? Endless. So like even the most basic fundamental human right, like just let's not bomb children. We couldn't get that that kind of demand fulfilled by our government. And I don't think that just replacing there's a great Marx quote about basically every few years you get to choose the your oppressors in who serve as your representatives basically. And I think that's what we have, and we have to see past the kayfabe, what we call the wrestling, professional wrestling, red blue kind of nonsense that keeps us distracted. And
but here's what I would say then. If we're saying, okay, it's not going to happen through the electoral process, then how does it happen?
Direct action. I mean, the way that everything has happened in even the most minimal reforms that we got passed. If you look back at labor rights in the Gilded Age, if you look back at women's suffrage, I mean, women didn't vote their suffrage, and they didn't obtain the right to vote. Women didn't obtain the right to vote by voting for it, right? You think about like the New Deal reforms. Again, they're not sufficient at all, and they're in so many ways, like you've described, not just insufficient, but exclusionary and racist and all that kind of stuff. It took like the largest mobilization of our labor movement in American history. I mean, it was really the last time that capitalism was actually fundamentally challenged. And think about like the civil rights movement in the 1960s, 50s and 60s. The programs, the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, they're enacted by a government, but we didn't get there by voting, right? Like there were it wasn't just the marches, it wasn't just the bus boycotts, it was a whole collective organized set of direct actions that made it impossible to go any further, to not pass those things. That'd be my kind of.
And I'm still pushing back because I still believe that and we can disagree with this all day, but I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I still think the electoral process is a tool, because again, my point is somebody's got to sign this into. It's just not gonna pop up because we wanted to. We will love our politicians to have, because I say there's 535 representatives in Congress right now, if you count House and Senate. I say clean house, top to bottom, from Trump down, clean it out. That's what I say. Mm-hmm. But somebody, even through the women's suffrage, yes, they did direct actions, but somebody still had to say, you know what? Let's give white women, because we all know Black women did not have the right to vote in 1920.
Right.
The Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act. Yes, there was direct actions, March on Washington and all those things, but Lyndon Baines Johnson still had to put his signature on it, making it a law. So What I'm saying is don't emphasize it, but I'm saying don't leave it, because I think that's a tool. And if people paid attention to who they were voting to instead of just watching the lamestream media, we'd be a lot better off. Now, do I think it's ultimately the answer? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
we have. I do think there are plenty of third-party candidates that would be for this idea. It's just the way our system is set up. Most people don't even think about a third-party candidate.
Spoiler! You're a spoiler. What do you want, Trump?
And I would say, well, I don't want Biden, nor do I want Trump. But I think, that's a whole mind shift change. I'm just saying it's a part of the. It's a part. It's not even a large part of the toolbox, but it's got to be considered, because at the end of the day, and yes, I've said this point 15 times, I'm going to say it the 16th, somebody's got to sign this into law. No matter What? Because what we don't want is, well, New York is going to have a New York jobs guarantee program. And then, well, Indiana's not because our governor is stupid. Illinois is going to have an Illinois jobs guarantee program, Connecticut. And then you're like, well, I don't live in any of those states. Mm-hmm. What I don't want to happen is what's happening with the reparations movement, whereas you're seeing this state movement, which to me doesn't even solve the problem because reparations is a federal issue. That is a federal issue that the federal government benefited by enslaving Africans, by Jim Crow, the school to prison pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I was saying. So we're going to get to these comments, and then I'm going to say something.
I just want to say one thing in response to what you said, and that's in terms of modern monetary theory and in terms of the federal job guarantee and everything that we talk about today, talked about today. A lot of this I think, has to be viewed from the perspective of these are radicalizing tools. Modern monetary theory is a lens that we use to evaluate the choices that our federal government makes and a policy choice, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and the federal job guarantee is, we don't even see it on the horizon, right? But it allows us to think about, okay, why isn't our government doing this? What would be it opens up your imagination to what's possible, and then helps you. For me, I think modern monetary theory and job guarantee makes me think about not only what would be possible, but why doesn't our government do this?
They don't want to. Listen, they don't want
to. But ultimately, like a deeper question of like why or like and then like they don't want to, but because they are paid, captured, right? Yeah, right. Like.
Let me shut up. Let me get to these comments because I can go on about what Citizens United actually did because I'm thinking, I'm gonna say it now and then I'm gonna get to the comments. These politicians, Democrats, because y'all love to do this. Well, we need to get rid of Citizens United. Why don't you propose legislation that would obliterate Citizens United? Or my second point, you don't have to take big money.
Right.
You can just take small contributions. Nobody's stopping you. You could just say, I'm not going to accept PAC money. But hey, that's a conversation. That's a question I always ask. It's like, well, why don't you just stop taking it? I know why, but I'm not here. I listen and I judge. How about that? I listen and I judge.
Did you hear California governor's? He was asked about APAC money, and he said something like, "It's never crossed my mind. I don't know. I don't know. If it's never crossed your mind, you can just say no. I'm not going to take APAC money. No. If it's not that big a deal to you, if it's just like, oh, I don't know.
You do know you have the option of say what you want about Bernie Sanders. He didn't take PAC money. He literally said, I'm going to do through small dollar contributions. You could do the same thing, but you won't. I wonder why.
Yeah.
As that rap song says, must be the money, but I'm not going to even go there. But let's just hit these comments and because we're almost at 1:30. I did not expect to be this long, guys, but this has been a really good discussion. So Nelson says what we have now is an oligarchy, unfortunately. I don't know. I can't read this, but it says what we have now is Black Americans have always had fascism in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Yes, we're so used to it. It's like, oh, y'all just now catching up.
Yeah, right.
We're like, oh, yeah, really? We've been telling y'all this for years, but Thea says a federal jobs guarantee is a good concept. Unfortunately, people don't want to seriously work the concept through realistically. He also says, Tracy, I will be making a video about something close to a work guarantee. Not quite, but close. Theus, please tell me when so I can promote that video. Not to mention Citizens United rampant corruption and the executive systematic racism. Today's topic just strengthens the need for the founding of the Truth and Justice and Love Party, which I'm a part of, and its mission to get those will be beneficial for real change. Truth, justice, Justice and Love Party, he's talking about Justice for All Party never surrenders. And he said, careful, Paul. People don't seriously want to ask why beyond. Wait a minute. Let me get this. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Careful, Paul. People don't seriously want to ask why beyond what makes them comfortable or touches as they're on their fantasies. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of it. People don't ask those questions about what we can do because one, we're busy trying to live, right? We're busy trying to survive. We're busy trying to pay bills. I'm so far behind bills. I don't even want to tell you all the story about why I'm asking for contribution. It's getting expensive out here to do basic. I'm talking about food, gasoline, because it's not like we got like energy. No, who can afford an energy efficient car?
Yep.
Not me. I wish I could. I would love to have a non-dependent vehicle, non-gas dependent vehicle. Can I afford it? No, I cannot. But people are busy living, so they aren't thinking of this. And when you say direct action, this is a promise. I promise this is the well, Rue, by the way, checked in. It's justice. Well, actually, the party is justiceforall.us. That is the party that he is talking about, which again, I am on as a national committee person and the state chair for the state of Indiana. But here is my last kind of thing. Again, I think a lot of these anti-federal jobs people, and I would love to talk about this in another episode, because I believe that white supremacy is the root of everything that we've talked about today. Everything. How the system is set up for the billionaire white supremacy class and how they've used it. We could literally, if the Republican Party and the Democrats, because I won't let them escape. They're less evil. No, they're just as evil. If they really wanted to, they could just say, hey, 17 million people out of work. Let's create a jobs program and put everybody back to work. Do you know what a winning message that would be? If any Democrat or Republican ran on just that message, not Medicare for all, not any of the war in Gaza, although they should be doing those things too. But if they just ran on that, that's such a winning message to say people need jobs. Here are the jobs. But nope, you don't get it because, again, you have people like former Senator Joe Manchin saying things like, well, if you give them money or give them jobs, they might buy guns and drugs. Really, Joe? Tell us how you really feel about that. So I want to have a further discussion about the root of white supremacy, billionaire class racism in this whole discussion. I don't know where I'm going to take it because, again, when I come up with these ideas, I never know where they're going to go. But I'm just thinking, boy, that seems to be the root of all of this.
Yeah. I hear you there. I agree. I completely agree. It's and just as far as like the idea of why our representatives don't offer that. I mean, they represent the capitalist class that benefits from our immiseration. They benefit from our being in debt to private banks. They benefit from our wages being suppressed so that we don't have any choice but to work for less, work for no benefits. They are, you know what I mean?
That's right.
It's all part of the
plan. But that's not even smart because if I'm Amazon or Walmart, I'm thinking, oh, gee, if people have more money, they'll spend more. Like if they make more, they'll spend more. So why don't we have a tool that will let them make more money so that they can spend? It's just I guess my mind is not. Yeah. I'm just not like it doesn't make sense. I'm like, but you're shooting yourself in the foot.
I'd say this when people's basic necessities are decommodified, when they don't have to worry about how am I going to pay for my health? How am I going to pay for my house? How am I going to pay for my rent? How am I going to pay for my child's education, or all these other things? If those are not pressing concerns on you that are weighing on you every day, one day after the next, you're free to demand more, right?
Right, because you need this job. Where else are you going to go?
Like you said, I don't have the time or the mental space to think about all this other stuff. I have to get to work. I have to pay my bills. I can't.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Right?
Yep.
Exhausted.
So that is going to be our last question, because boy, did this show go way longer than I thought. We started at 7. It is 9:04. Everybody, we started at 7:30.
7:30.
Yeah, they did not to say I didn't enjoy, but I didn't realize I was having all these questions. But we're gonna wrap it up here with no GI for Black. Yeah, no GI Bill for Black Americans. Darn, what the F. Because I don't think we don't curse on this show at all. Thank you very much. And great show, Tracy and Paul. Paul, finally tell us about the Real Progressives. I hope I got the name right.
Yeah.
And maybe talk about our Tuesday meetings that I go to, and I sit there like, I think I know what they're talking about, but I don't really know. But I'm there. Like every Tuesday, I'm sitting right in there like, yep, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen.
So yeah, every week we release a podcast, and I'll try to get my big stupid head out of the way. But every week we release a podcast called Macro and Cheese, which, used to be really limited to macroeconomic issues, but we've do all sorts of topics. This Tuesday's episode is about cybersecurity and AI and the surveillance state, kind of like 1984ish kind of Big Brother kind of stuff, both in our activist lives, and just like even generally on YouTube, on these giant streaming services and that kind of stuff. So it's with Heidi Bogosian. That's going to be we release our podcast every Saturday morning, and then on Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we get together, listen to the podcast, and discuss it in like 15-20 minute increments. And we really we're trying to not only learn together, learn from each other, but build a community. So we'd love to have you there. We also have again, I don't know if I can see it. We also have all these links up here. Our website, if you just go to realprogressives.org. We have a Substack. We have a Facebook page. If you just search for Modern Monetary Theory for Real Progressives, you can check that out. We have a lot of great discussions on there. So yeah, most of we don't require you to be, a communist or a socialist, but I'd say a lot of us are definitely leaning towards that direction, or are Marxist Leninists or Trotskyists, some of us. So we're as an organization, we don't require that you're socialist or necessarily anti-capitalist, but that is kind of not a requirement, but we ask that you come with an open mind at the very least. And you come in good faith.
And then there are people like me that show up.
Yeah. Yes. We love that. We love you. You have been such a wonderful addition to our meetings, and you show up like nobody. There's so many people will give a thumbs up, but they don't actually come to our meetings. Also, we have for the next few weeks now, we're now 2 episodes into it. We're doing a book club on Lenin's The State and Revolution. That's on Thursday evenings, and you can find all of that information, registration and more information on our website. Just go to realprogressives.org. I think that we are actually having some issues with the website today. I hope it's back up. But if not, you can just search for on our Facebook. Oh no, it's available. Yeah, just go to realprogressive.org. You'll see all of the event information on there at the top. It's just it'll be registration links and all that kind of stuff. So we hope to see all of you there if you can make it.
And I did put the realprogressives.org address in
Awesome.
the chat, so you can also see it there. Remember, everybody, I will be back Saturday. For the Saturday show, we'll be back. Yes, the Saturday show is where I do inept topics, such as this Saturday. I will be talking about my top favorite educational shows. I'll just let you use your imagination. That'll be at 2. Then the Justice is Here podcast will be on at 7. I'm thinking I will be solo, so we'll talk about the convention, and I'm going to ask Paul to stay around for 5 more minutes after we go off the air, because I have something I want to propose, and hopefully the group is open to doing that. But remember, everybody, hit, smash, obliterate, destroy that subscribe button. I want to get to 1,000. Support me on Patreon. Patreon support starts at $2 per month. Starting in February, we will have a Patreon exclusive show. Won't be available on YouTube. Also, remember, yes, I'm begging. I don't like to do it, but this channel costs money for me to do it. If you could hit my GoFundMe campaign, I think my goal is $1,500. So if you're one of those people with $1,500, thank you very much. But any size donation, I will appreciate. I am definitely trying to get like a regular desk with a regular microphone hanging up on it, because what I got now, it works, but not to the what I'd like. And remember, our last show for this year will be the 3rd week of December, and then next year we will move to Tuesdays. Yeah, I'm dropping this announcement on you guys now, but the Real Progressive Group, I'm so used to coming in on Tuesdays. I'll be there, but I'll always be late because I will be moving the podcast to Tuesdays. The Tracy Show will move to Tuesdays, and you all know that the Justice is Here podcast will move to Thursdays, and then the High Heels and the Blue Jeans and High Heels podcast will be on Patreon on Mondays. So I got a full 2026 schedule going. Thank you all so much. This is probably one of the best shows I have ever did. I learned so much. Now I feel like, okay, I'm going to stop talking about UBI, and now I'm going to switch over and I'm going to start talking about the Federal Jobs Guarantee Program. I'm going to do the outro. I will see you when I see you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great evening.